All right, welcome to the next lesson. So in the last lesson, we were talking about basically the beginning of the Warring States period. In the last two lessons, we're talking about the beginning of the Warring States period, how this is a period of just massive warfare that China just goes down into, and it goes for generations, it goes for 2 centuries. And in the midst of it all, the Chinese realized they just lost the ability to have happiness. But mainly the idea of a society that can generates happiness, but allows people to be as happy as possible. So the two major philosophies we've covered so far are Confucianism and Taoism. If you remember, Confucianism is this idea that people are born inherently good, where you can trust people, and only do you distrust people when they prove that they can be when they prove that they need to be distrusted. But that you can still trust that they can still be trusted again at some point. It is also based off this idea of know your place. Know where you're at in society and act accordingly to the place you're in. And then if everybody can just do that, there'll be peace and harmony that will abound across the land. So that's Confucianism. And by the way, again, that does become the adopted philosophy during the Han Dynasty, what we'll talk about in a future lesson, but stays that way for 2,000 years up until the 1900s. So Confucianism, definitely a huge part of Chinese culture and society. Although I think I mentioned this earlier, Confucius actually died thinking he was a failure because no one really would listen to him during his lifetime. At least they wouldn't. People listened to him, but no one actually tried out what he was saying. You could say. No Chinese state or official or governor or warlord basically took it on, and he tried and tried and tried, and it didn't work. Anyways, then we went to Taoism. Taoism, just on the simplistic side, not to get way into it again, is just this idea of just go with the flow. Just whether life is good or bad, just accept it and just follow where the water takes you, like if you're floating down a river type thing. Do not exercise your will against those things. And it actually takes some discipline just to stay in the water. Just don't mess things up, you could say. And again, there's a lot more to that, but that's the basic idea. And now we're getting into the third lesson. The third lesson now is legalism, or the third philosophy, third major philosophy that comes out in the Warring States period of the end of the Zhou dynasty. Now, legalism is one that actually we understand a little bit better. Just to bring this up, first off, you need to know that legalism is the exact opposite of Confucianism. So legalism is founded on the belief that people are inherently evil, whereas Confucianism was based off the belief that people are inherently good. So, hence the picture I put up there of Superman pushing a crippled kid over the cliff. Definitely not a nice thing to do, but essentially the mindset of legalism is basically saying that even someone as awesome as Superman will do something pretty nasty if he feels like there are no consequences that can stop him, and that he will do quote unquote bad things. Now, in order to stop this and to essentially have a society where happiness can abound, legalism then says that basically you need to have a strong government, a very strong government with very strict laws and punishments in place to force people to do good. Examples would be like this. Well, if you don't want your hands cut off, then don't steal anything. If you don't want to get killed, then don't kill anybody else. If you don't want to get grounded, then do your homework. These are all examples of legalism. I'm pretty dang sure between those extreme examples I used and the simple example I used, everybody here that is listening to me at the moment, you get this. We see a lot of aspects or uses of legalism in our society today. And then we can argue a lot about if it works or it doesn't work. But we have a lot of it. For instance, if you look at even our government, our central government, I should say, with the Constitution of the United States at the head of it, we like to talk about, and for good reason, that we have a planned government or a written plan of government that establishes checks and balances and things like that, and is able to separate power in a way to where we don't have anybody taking full control, and that our freedoms are protected and things like that. But the funny thing about the Constitution is it is a legalist document. It does things like you can do this and you can't do this. And the whole reason why it has a lot of things that says you can't do this in it is that it realizes that you need to at least have some things in place, because there will be people out there that will take advantage of the situation. There's always those people that are willing to muck things up, you could say. So, I said muck. Anyways, I'm just wondering if this is in the video and that comes out differently. So, or when someone listens to this in the video, that comes out differently. Anyways, moving on. So, where was I? Oh yes, and talking about the Constitution. Something interesting about the Constitution is it actually uses legalism against itself. Hopefully I explained legalism all right, but yeah, in the Constitution it actually keeps us, has all these things saying, no, you have to do this, like you can only be so old to become president, you have to be a natural born citizen, things like that. Essentially saying you can't trust people that aren't of a certain age, or you can't trust people that weren't born in the United States to have the interests of the United States at heart. But then it has the Bill of Rights in it, saying the government can't do this to you. You are allowed free speech, the right to bear arms, and things like right to the press, freedom of religion. And in a way, it acts. I can't really say against itself, but it is written in a way that provides a society, hopefully with enough safety and security in place, by saying you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this, but at the same time provides enough choice by saying the government can't do this, the government can't do this, the government can't do this. So that's actually what makes it a unique document. I know I talked about that a little bit earlier, but again, one of the things about this class that I'm trying to do is hopefully help you compare the world you live in versus what's happened in the past. And you can see in many cases how the past has influenced how we do things today. But the Constitution of the United States is very unique, but it is a legalist document through and through, just legalist on us and legalist against the government, which is dang awesome. So, now, with this idea though, rules and consequences need to be in place to enforce good behavior. Again, like I said earlier, this has been around for just ever. Every society has had this. Like every one of us, everybody listening to me right now, you get this. We have it in our families, we have it in the school, like how many laws are there in school, you could say, or consequences are in school. But the one question you have to get to is, does it provide happiness, or does it just provide safety and security? So, simple question to ask, and one that I kind of hope you think about a bit. If you want to pause the video and discuss that, feel free to do so. But anyways, moving on. That's legalism for you. I don't think I need to explain much more there, because it is quite simplistic in the idea that people are bad, so you got to force them to be good. Now, sound familiar? I just put that in there because, yeah, it definitely does sound familiar. Now, I'm going to take all three philosophies and apply them to how they're supposed to be seen within government. So first, Confucianism. Loyalty to government is your moral duty. The ruler's always at the top, ruler to subject thing at the main part of the 5 basic relationships. And along with that, you have to want to sacrifice your wants and desires in order to better those around you. Holy cow, this is probably one of the most argued about things of all time. First off, let's take it with what Confucianism is saying. Simply put, Confucianism, loyalty to the government is your moral duty. So if you have a sense of loyalty to the government, then you would want to sacrifice your wants and desires to better those around you, basically to help out do what the government is telling you to do, because the government should have the best interests of people at heart. But this is all relying on the idea that people are born good. So leaders in the government are good people. The people following are good people. Just everybody in general are good people, and so therefore this should work. If you can imagine, and again, if you want to pause the video and discuss this, you can, but that has been argued about. I will put one little thing in there. When it says sacrifice your wants and desires in order to better those around you, think of it in this way. Is it talking about sacrifice as in a personal choice, meaning that you want to, you're more than willing to sacrifice things that you have in life or of your time to help those around you. Essentially what is called giving service or being charitable. Or is that talking about that you must be forced to sacrifice, meaning that you are told to give things up and you better just want to do it anyways? But then you get to the idea, in that situation, is it really sacrifice? So that is a big argument. People, I'm not going to go down that road right now. That's a road we'll actually get to more so in the next class. When I say next class, I mean the next semester when we get into modern world history. But it is something to think about now. So, now, legalism, easy. We just explained this. Laws are needed to keep peace and order. So it's just there. Now, Taoism is the interesting one because, again, Taoism doesn't say that there is necessarily right or wrong. It's just there is what there is. And it will say that, you know what, a good leader or will be someone who understands when to use virtue and when to use cruelty. In doing so, in the idea of, like, I know it sounds kind of weird, but you're going with the flow. Well, in this situation, I can see how this person needs to be punished. In this situation, I can see how this person needs to receive some mercy. And so it's fairly individual based, but also based off the situation at hand. And that's something, at least when you're looking at Taoism government, you could say, well, that's understandable. But then you get into the word that we love to say all the time, well, what's fair? What if you had two people do the exact same crime? Is it okay to give one mercy and the other one not? Anyways, again, things to think about. So, and if this is making you think or having you go down, a little bit of a rabbit hole in your mind of just like, how does this work? How does this compare to our system of government and the world around you right now and the way you viewed things? Well, then you're putting yourself in the same position that the Chinese have been in for about the last 2,000 to 2,500 years, where they have been trying to apply these things in the best way possible as well. So, but moving on now. Getting back into the history, the Warring States period does come to an end. So, and that is when the Qin dynasty takes over. I shouldn't say takes over, wins the whole thing. So, and actually, you know what, at this point I'm realizing that this lesson has gone a little bit long. I've noticed that my other lessons have been a little bit long, and I know, I should really say a little bit long, we're about 12 minutes in. And there's actually a lot to talk about with the Qin dynasty, so I'm going to separate this. So this will just be the lesson on legalism, and I'll have the next lesson be on the Qin dynasty. See you in the next one.